there's a bluebird in my heart that wants to get out, but I am too clever. And I only let him out at night sometimes, when everybody's asleep. I say, I know that you're in there, so don't be sad. And then I put him back in, but he's singing a little in there. I haven't let the world let him die. And we sleep together, like that, with our secret pact. And it's nice enough to make a man weep, but I don't weep. Do you? When I was in my 3rd and 4th year in art school, I would say that was one of the other most creative times in my life. And what I mean by that is, like, I was making work at that time that was really close to the things that I was thinking about and was interested in discovering about myself and the world. And it felt like I was actually getting at something really meaningful then. And I had only reached that state because I put in a huge amount of effort into working as an artist, and I was starting to find my style, and I could feel it, and I kind of knew it when I was in it, that I was in a phase where there was a lot of self-learning going on, you know. And it's maybe not as, it was more of a whisper then than it is now. Now it's blatantly obvious to me that through my art I can discover my inner world. That's the best way of discovering the inner self or whatever. And then I had a crisis, and that crisis was I got hit by my own car, which is just such a ridiculous story. And I've been very embarrassed to sort of tell it, because I've had a lot of shame attached to that story because of how upset it made me feel, even though it was fairly insignificant from an outsider's perspective, in the sense. So what I was thinking at the time was, I got hit by my own car, and this was when I was on a night out and I was having a good laugh with a few of my mates, and I got out of the car and I was driving to take a piss, and my friend got in the front seat of the car, who wasn't an experienced driver. And so I decided it would be funny that I get on top of the bonnet, and that you know, to stop the guys. It was some joke I had with myself, and then he started accelerating the car, driving really fast, and I was on the bonnet. I was like, stop, 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 and he slammed the brakes, and I flew off the car, and I landed on my right ankle. And at the time I didn't know I shattered my ankle, but that's what happened. And I tried to stand up, and I remember, like, the pain was excruciating, one of the worst pains I've ever felt. And I tried to stand up, and my ankle just peeled to the side. And even then, I don't think I admitted to myself that it was broken. I didn't want it to be the case. So anyways, I went to the hospital the next day, and yeah, I had completely shattered my ankle, and it would have to be reconstructed with screws and a plate and so on. And it was, and I wasn't sure that, you know, would I walk properly after this operation? And that put me into a sort of downward spiral of sorts, in the sense that the first thing, you know, that came up for me was, if I can't walk properly, I can't do the dream, the number one dream, which was be an actor. Like, actors can't walk normally, they don't have limps, you know, like, this is crazy at the time, but that's really what I felt. And I was like, that was the true, it was so funny that crisis would throw me into that realization that acting was the thing that I had to try, and that was, you know, it was blatantly obvious once I was in crisis. And why this was a big problem as well, because I have a just genetic disorder in my family where there is musculature atrophy in the lower limbs. And I don't really tell most people this, but if I was in a cast for months on end with this broken ankle, I could have severe atrophy in the muscle in the lower limb, and then so that in tandem with the severe injury and the musculature atrophy, I may not walk properly ever again. And so that was a massive fear for me. And then I went into crisis, in the sense I just indulged in instant gratifications and forgot about the creative, literally forgot about the great creative work I was doing, and just left that to the side and just binged on sort of instant gratifications, because I thought, in some sense, what's the point to anything? And in that period of my life, I don't think I sort of told people that, but that's what I had, you know, sort of feeling inside. And that spiral that I sort of went into, like, I wasn't happy in it, and I was happy before, but that crisis sent me into it, and a severe emptiness opened up to me. And I realized then, after I got out of the cast and my ankle was somewhat fine, it's still not as good as the left ankle, and if I was to step off something that was steep, I would definitely go with the left foot first. You know, I'm always protecting that right ankle to make sure that I never break it again. After I realized that it would be fine and I could walk normally again, I realized that I should never go into that state of crisis again, and I should be listening to what's going on with that sense of emptiness that's there with what comes with a crisis. And why I'm tying this to the video that I'm making now is this idea that there's an emptiness we all feel. Well, I felt this ever since I was really young, that my life could be way more than the external world is showing me, and that the inner world that's going on for me is much more rich than how I feel the external world could be, and that even in myself, even my inner world could be more rich, and it could have more life in it, and just this, always this sense of emptiness. I mean, you could call it suffering, but it's more this existential emptiness. Oh, my life could be so much more than this. And why I'm tying that first story in is that anytime, and this is on a micro level and even on a larger scale, I've tended to, and I've seen people do this as well, when that emptiness is foreboding, like when that emptiness is sitting there, we have an inclination to fill that emptiness with pleasures like instant gratifications. And I have experienced many of these over the years that have blocked this emptiness in me, that what I think, and now I know that this emptiness is always telling me something, always guiding me, even though it might feel bleak or foreboding. It's always telling me where I should go and what's important to me, and that it is the realest of the voices in your head. It is the true self, I feel. It isn't the loud voice, but a whisper saying, you know, this is what you're important with. You need to go down this way. But if you fill that emptiness up with instant gratifications, with whether it be, you know, pornography, video games, smoking, drinking, socializing too much, working too hard, there's millions, as we all know, and you can easily slip into it because it's so easy, and the pleasure is enjoyable, and you don't have to sit in that feeling of emptiness. But if you the more you move away from that emptiness and you fill it with those instant gratifications, it dulls the senses, and so you can't hear that intuition any longer. Well, for me, the more I dull the senses, the less I can hear that intuitive inner voice telling me, you know, Fergus, you should go this way, or you should go that way, or these are the creative endeavors that you should go for. This is what's truly what you're about. And they're happening all the time for me. And why I'm making this video, and it's a reminder to myself and to anyone who's watching, you know, I can easily slip into, and I do it every week or every month, you know, into this cycle of filling that void a little bit with these sort of instant gratifications, and not focusing on and listening and just sitting in that emptiness and going, well, what's it telling me, and where should I go forward? And it's a hard thing to do, and it feels like tough medicine, but once you swallow it, you feel much better. You feel deeply much better than if you were to satiate it or satisfy it with the various instant gratifications that you could do. So I just recently finished the book Mastery by Robert Greene, and there's a section about John Coltrane, which was a saxophone player in the 60s and 70s, I think. And he was a very disciplined musician. And the point I'm making about the discipline is that, you know, all he thought about and worked on was his saxophone playing. And he tried many different styles until he found himself in the instrument. And there was a phase in his career where he, you know, became a heroin addict for a couple of years. And he said that that was the worst creative phase of his life. And once he kicked the habit, he was able to kick the habit, he went back to the normal creativity that he had before, you know, he got addicted to heroin. And so that analogy to me says that anytime you're trying to fill that void, that emptiness, it's better to sit in it. And that's where the true creativity lies for me. And Robert Greene kind of goes into this idea that if you listen to that whisper, that inclinations that you have, that it will tell you, it will guide you, but you can't dull the senses to it. So I'm kind of making this video as a reminder to myself that to not fall off track and to get distracted and fill that void that will always be there, I think. I will always feel somewhat empty, and the times that I feel not so empty is when I'm making something that means something to me. And I think that's the same for everyone else.